Okay, welcome everybody to the 18th of August North Canterbury Fishing Game Council Public Council meeting via Zoom. For those of you there at home, we are holding a public council meeting due to lockdown level 4 via video conferencing. This is the record. It will be complemented with written minutes that will be posted on the Fishing Game website. Mr. Chairman, would you like to open the meeting?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, Rasmus. Sorry, I was on mute. So I'll open the meeting at 6:41 p.m. and I would like to ask Rex Gibson to talk through our karakia, please.
Thank you. Whakatakatahau ki te uru, whakatakatahau ki te taonga. Ki makina ki atu, ki mataratara ki tai. He hi, aki ana, te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, te he Moriora. And for those who want the translation, it was in our minutes.
Okay, thank you, Rex. We'll move on to, so before we move on to anything, we'll just confirm, Rasmus, can you just capture who's here and that Stu has put in an apology?
Yes, I've done that.
Okay, so we'll move on to confirmation of minutes from previous meetings.
Don't we need to accept the apology of Stuart first?
You can do if you want.
Well, we have to. It's
Yep.
meeting form that you do that.
Would you like to put that motion?
That we accept Stuart's apology.
Seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay,
Dave.
thanks, Dave. All those in favour, raise your hand. Hold on, I've got to get back to the video. Just, okay, all those in favour, raise your hand. Okay, carried. Thank you. Sorry, I'm jumping between the screen and the agenda. So you just have to bear with me a wee bit. So item 1.3 is the confirmation of minutes from previous meetings. So, and we're talking about the meeting of the 16th of June 2021 and the special meeting that we had on the 1st of August, and hopefully you've all caught up with the change to those minutes suggested by Dave via email and agreed by everyone. So perhaps before we carry on, any questions on the minutes from the 16th of June? No, we're okay with those. So
Rasmus, did you get my changes?
Yes.
I emailed them through.
Yes, I did.
Have they been changed, or do we need approval for them to be changed?
If they were,
are they changed in here with the board pack stuff?
no, they're coming afterwards by Phil.
So
we can't approve minutes if someone's, you need to talk through your proposed changes, Phil, and we can decide whether they set them or not.
Correct. That's what I thought the process was. But unfortunately, I'm having trouble. My computer has crashed and I can't load any documents. But it was around the wording of the motion that we did for the Salmon Committee. And it had in there day-to-day. And if you see above it, I speak against the fact that it was day-to-day management.
John,
So I was asking for that to be removed.
okay, so that's not done yet.
Let me pull it up. Phil is suggesting, if I share the screen, that the future of the Sea Run Salmon Committee be disbanded.
You're not sharing your screen yet.
Okay, my suggestion here, Mr. Chairman, is that this can simply be done via the voting power on Board Pro, and we will resend out that 16th meeting so that Phil's amendment proposed can be put to a vote and then confirmed.
Okay, so moving on to 1.3b, so the minutes of the meeting 1st of August. Has
Yep.
anyone got any questions of those? They're the ones that got
just-
changed.
Yeah, Alan.
One,
Sorry.
Trevor?
Is that the one where I commented that I thought the minutes were much too brief, given that the public should have?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep,
well,
but it's
yeah.
also the minutes that I typed as we were going by myself.
Yeah, no, I
um,
understand that.
So I
Alan.
can't go back and make it up.
Yeah, but
Um,
I just think we owe the public a bit more by way of informing them what things council considered in arriving at a conclusion that it's just a bare bones motion.
Yep, point taken. You're that you're correct. Unfortunately, just the way we did that special meeting meant that it was being done as we spoke about it. So there's not much I can do other than I'm not sure what I can do there.
so all I was making the comment was that I spoke against the day-to-day thing, and I'm the person that moved the motion. So therefore I have a problem with the motion.
Which minutes are we talking about now?
So I'm just referring to the other one. So if you have a vote without people commenting on it, is that going to be an issue?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
Sorry, the one that I was referring to, if we do a vote via Broad Pro, does anyone need to speak to me about it, or because I'm the person that moved the motion?
So Philip, are you saying you moved the motion and then you're unhappy with the motion that you moved?
The motion I moved is not how I worded it.
Oh, okay.
Phil raised the point. Sorry, and we've sort of moved on, but let's go back to the 16th of June. Phil raised the point that the motion wasn't worded correctly, and there was 2 words, day-to-day management, to be taken out. And I'll propose to the chairman I circulate that via Board Pro for your review and approval. Phil is correct. I've checked my minutes, and it's misrecorded in the way it was sent out.
Can I ask, Phil, what's your concern is about the reference just to the day-to-day in front of governance? Is it?
Yes, correct.
Well, couldn't we just agree now that the minutes will be amended to remove those words?
I'm comfortable with that. That's what I put forward.
Okay. All right, we'll put forward that motion and we'll put that to the vote.
Okay, yeah. At present, I can't see anyone's, but go for it. I'll move it. That's the minutes are changed to remove the word day-to-day.
Someone second that?
I'll second that.
Sorry, was that you,
Richard.
Richard?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All those in favour, raise your hand. Against? Carried. Sorry, we'll just slow down, Resma, so you can capture all of that.
Was there anybody against there?
No.
Done.
Okay, so bear with me. Just gonna jump back into here. So the minutes of the, sorry, now I've lost everything. Oh, Jesus. The minutes, I'm jumping between screens, it's really difficult. The minutes that Trevor describes as being brief, what are we going to do about those? It's the first of August
sorry, Mr.
special
Chairman.
meeting.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, but now that you've added Phil's correction, do you want to have a vote and approve those 16th of June minutes, and then we go on to the 1st of August? So we just get that. finished?
We just did that.
Oh, we only
We
approved the
just did
amendment.
that. Are we prepared to approve the minutes?
I'll move that way.
I'll
The
second it.
seconder,
Philip.
all those in favour,
Aye.
raise your hands to get back. Against? Carried.
Right.
So the
Cool.
1st of, oh, sorry, I'm jumping between screens. The 1st of August. Right, what are we going to do with these? So this was a special meeting. We made a number of decisions. The minutes really just reflect the decisions because I was typing and chairing the meeting at once.
I've got a suggestion, Alan.
What's that?
I'm willing to quickly try and summarize those conversations now on record, so that if anybody has any concerns with them from the public, they can see it as part of this record.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
So and if I get it wrong, please shout out. So the first one is that we resolved to use $10,000 from our reserves towards licensing costs, and this is as a result of there not being central budgeting available for doing that. There was a miscalculation by NZ Council and NZ Council staff. Is that correct?
It's correct by me.
And so in order to put together the material that's needed to support that bag license, as in change of technology to print the license differently and whatnot, a one-off cost was needed this year to help make that change.
May I correct slightly there, Chris? It's not exactly right. It came in after the license fee had set, and therefore there was no other way than to take it from reserves. And the details for the public is in the accompanying papers for that special meeting, which will be put up on as supporting the document. So the exact wording there, but it's very close.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then the second one was that we resolved the number of elected councillors for this election be 8. And that was because we're recognising that there are potential changes in play coming, and we may, within the term of the next council, be amalgamated. And within our recommendations to the review committee, and then within our recommendations or response to their recommendations to the minister, we agreed that it should be cut back down. So in order to stay in line with our previous recommendations, we've decided that we'll have a council of 8 this year. Does that sound about right?
Excellent.
Excellent. Well done, Chris.
Thank you.
Cool.
All right, everyone happy with that?
Yep.
Description, so that's now on record. So if we could go back and someone could put a motion to accept the minutes of the 1st of August, the special meeting.
I'll put the motion.
Okay, can we have a seconder, please? That's Phil.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Ken seconds it, and all those in favour raise your hand. And against? Carried. Okay, thank you, guys. Following on down the agenda, we get to conflict of interest. Is there any changes to the conflict of interest register? And that's changes from last meeting.
Yes, yeah, there is in my case. I'm no longer a shareholder in Fonterra, but I am in Sinlay.
You got that, Rasmus?
No, Rex, is this something that we've had before? Is it a new change?
I think I'd have planning. You just need to jump into that register.
Oh, I am now. So no long. Take that again, Rex.
Yes, remove the word Fonterra, replace it with Sinlay.
Yep. Okay.
Done.
He's jumped ship.
Well,
Yeah.
Fonterra were working a swindle.
Okay, thanks for that. So now we'll go into the notification of any general business. No one's got any general business.
Well, it's not general business, but I'd like to suggest that we defer anything more than acceptance of all the various reports until we actually have a chance to have paper copies in front of us. I'm finding it's too difficult working from screens and being part of a Zoom meeting at the same time. And I think we should only deal tonight with matters that require a resolution.
Does anyone else feel that way?
I'd like to have a discussion on the Swan one.
Yep. So I'm assuming everyone has seen the board pack and everyone's read the papers, even on the screen. I think we should probably carry on it, Rex, and they're not for decision, and just have a quick discussion about each of them. Hopefully, if there's anything that's contentious or we need to do more work on, we'll have to defer. Is that fair enough?
Well, as I say, I don't feel I can give adequate consideration to any of the documents without having the document, and I haven't had a chance to print them off myself. Yeah, and I certainly find it a lot easier working from paper copy than flicking between screens. And also, it's rather hard, particularly if we're working on a phone or a small laptop, actually getting the right magnitude and getting the whole page in at the right magnitude to actually give a reasonable discussion on things. If we're simply, if there is an issue on one, perhaps we can manage it, but I think it's crazy to go through all those reports without having hard copy to consult, but that's my personal view.
Well, I invite any other councillor to agree or disagree.
Yeah, I agree with Rex, actually. Yep.
All right, so we just want to make the decision and close the meeting and defer everything to the next meeting, which will be our last.
Other than any decisions that need to be made, and we've already had Phil say that he wants one decision.
No, it's a discussion on the Swan report by Notahu.
Can I just clarify, Rex, have you read the papers or not?
Yes, but I can't guarantee that I've remembered everything in them.
So
And I've read them on screen. I have had a lot of trouble with the spreadsheets, trying to work my way across because I couldn't get them to fit the screen. And even when I did, they were too small to read.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, Rick.
Well, that's fine, but we'll have to defer all of that stuff to the next meeting, which will be, when's our next meeting, Rasmus? Is it before the next election? Is this the second to last one?
The next meeting is scheduled for the 20th of October.
So could we have a printed out copy, courier it out to everyone that needs one, and we defer this meeting till next week?
Yeah, we could, because we're probably still going to be in lockdown. Oh, I don't know how you organise getting stuff couriered, to be fair.
Look,
Okay.
I'm not so sure I can answer that tonight, whether that's feasible or not. I can investigate and return to you.
So are we just talking about, like, I've got the PDF open, pages is the 132 page one, which is this meeting. If you want me to, I can print it out and get them couriered out to everyone.
Alan, I wonder if Rex is just referring, I think, specifically to the spreadsheets which relate to the financial reports. And I have the same problem as no doubt others do too, trying to read spreadsheets on a small screen. But all of the narrative papers, I would have thought we could have a conversation about those, about any issues that have emerged. Otherwise, we're going to have an impossibly long agenda at our next meeting, I suspect.
Rex, is that been the problem, reading the kind of spreadsheet stuff, or is it?
It has. It's also been the problem that I only got these into these papers today, the latest version. Perhaps that's my fault, but it's pretty hard to say that we can give really good consideration to it. I don't think I can recall a lot that I would have wanted to discuss anyway. I just think it's just an unfortunate thing that we've got the lockdown and we can't actually do our job as governors without having copies in front of us at the same time as we are talking about them.
So really what you're saying, Rex, is we shouldn't be doing meetings via video.
Well, I think we can do meetings where we've got a particular agenda where we know that there are some decisions to be made. But if we're going to have discussions, it's very difficult without having an adequate lead in with the data and an adequate way of looking at the data.
Right. Well, we did have an adequate lead in, but I understand that you're finding it hard to look at it. I think we will perhaps just get through the decision and then defer the rest of it. And I might talk to you, Richard. Are you at work? Are you still?
I have been working, yeah.
Yeah. Have you got the ability to, if I took the names of the people that are struggling with the files, have you got the ability to print and send out some?
Yeah.
Are couriers still working? Like, is that?
Yeah, that's a central service.
Okay, so who would need a copy of the papers?
Yeah,
So
I prefer a copy of the paper.
So Rex, Ken, Graham? No? Anyone else? Anyone else need a set of printout?
No, I
Okay.
can print
So,
anything I need.
given the numbers there, then could we just move a motion that we still proceed without, that we don't accept that it's difficult to make the decision or read the papers and we move on?
When the reality is there isn't a decision to make, it's just for our information and discussion. So we can have the discussion. So if you want to put forward a motion like that, that's the only fair thing to do.
Well, what's Rex's concern is that he can't read it adequately.
Yeah. Yep.
And that he would like to defer it.
Yeah, that's right, Rex, isn't it?
Motion, and then we've got to vote on it.
Yes, I'd like to see it deferred, but I think that it would be crazy to put it off till next week because we don't know where we're going to be next week.
No, look, we don't know where we're going to be in 2 weeks or 3 weeks' time, to be fair. So my kind of feeling is, although this is very difficult to do, and believe me, my job's more difficult than yours, we probably need to try and get through it and have some sort of sensible discussion, because we may not get this opportunity again. We just do not know.
And Rasmus put some of them up on the page so Rex can have a look at them, or is that as we go through them?
There's probably too much.
It's too small. Even if I put it half a screen, which I could do, it's still too small.
Look, let's try and get Zoom. Let's just try and get through it.
And just look at the document.
I think
look at all the ugly faces.
Yeah. Look, Rex, do you mind if we just try and box through it and have a discussion? Because otherwise we may, who knows what's going to happen. We may be in lockdown for 3 to 4 weeks here. And then we're into an election.
Yeah, I think we should have a good go at getting through what we can and defer any topics where there is concern that we don't have enough information in front of us.
Yep, let's do that. Okay,
see how it goes.
Yep. All right, so we do have one decision to make, and that is item 2.1. So that's the application to hold a fishing competition. Rasmus, maybe if you just give us a quick 10-second update, we can then get this sorted out reasonably quickly.
Right. In supporting papers, you've all seen a letter from the Rakaia River Promotions Committee applying to hold the regular Rakaia River salmon fishing competition and in February. And as per our previous decisions, the council is supportive of salmon competitions because it is a celebration of the connection between anglers and the fishery. There's been discussion about whether or not this adds extra harvest this year coming. With the season bag limit, it absolutely doesn't add any harvest pressure in addition to what is already allowable. In fact, it will require us probably to work with the Promotion Society to inform anglers that they may need to sort of think strategically about wanting to enter the competition can only be done if they have a season bag limit harvest card availability. and they need to have one fish at least left on their harvest card to be able to enter. So we'll have some discussions with them, and the council are free to vote on this proposed competition.
Ken, I'd invite you to add anything that you feel necessary.
Yeah, we've changed it a little bit this year. So we've sort of anticipated this. Last year, we don't accept trout as weigh in now. We're opening this year, we're opening up a new part of it to Kawai. So we're sort of getting away from a salmon fishing contest to just a fishing contest. If I guess at the end of the day, we're trying to do the right thing. So people just don't have to enter to catch salmon to be in the competition. We're taking a lot of the emphasis away from the main prize for the salmon and putting it across the board for other prizes such as Kawai, photo competitions and all that sort of stuff now. So yep, that's where we're standing with it.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Has any councillors got any questions?
I haven't got a question, but I would like to speak in support of Rakaia Promotions running the competition. I've found that they've been very ready to adapt the conditions in response to challenges that the fishery faces and continue to do so, and also acknowledge the work they do in respect of the Rakaia River and the fishery in general. So I would certainly support it going ahead in the more limited form that Ken's described.
Thanks, Trevor, and I also agree completely with that statement. Any other questions? Yep, and Bill does too, for the record. Any other questions? Can someone put forward a motion that we approve the fishing competition, please?
I'll move the motion that we approve the salmon fishing competition.
That's Phil Rasmus, and a seconder, please.
I'll do that.
That's Bill. All those in favour, raise your hand. All those against?
I'll abstain from the vote.
Yep, so it's passed or carried, and Ken abstained. I'll just let you have a little bit of time to catch up, Rasmus.
Much
Before
appreciated.
we continue on. Still busy writing.
Yep.
While you're doing that, I'll talk. So the next, so that's the only decision for this meeting. So we move into our discussion section. And the first part of that is item 3.1, which is a joint management plan for Te Waihora Mai and the management report. And perhaps the easiest way to quickly sum this up would be to ask you to kind of give us another 30-second summation. Rasmus, then questions, then we'll move on.
Look, I think the report speaks for itself. It's the standard normal report that comes out every year. It's a long-term collaboration between North Canterbury Fishing Game, Department of Conservation and Ngāi Tahu. And this joint management plan is due for updating, and I see the Black Swan proposal put to the council as an essential and a natural progression of that updating. So this all feeds together quite well.
Okay, thank you, Rasmus. Is there any questions?
Yeah, in there it shows that we haven't done a lot of mai removal over the last few years, but still got a considerable amount of money going into that account. What's the intention for the use in the future?
That is the discussion of the joint committee, and at the moment iwi are the local runanga around the lake are having discussions with Tront or Ngāi Tahu about how they best can capture the desire for future direction. So there's some uncertainty about exactly when we will get together around the next meeting, but the direction hasn't been set.
Because didn't we put forward a proposal and then they turned it down?
There was a proposal put forward about doing more research on the Green Park sands, about recreational access and potential conflicts of vehicle access to creating damage on the Green Park Sands. And yes, they turned that down.
Chris, do you have anything to add?
Not specifically. It's a group that probably hasn't reached its potential, I would say. And there's lots of reasons for that. It's difficult when you've got Doc who like to tell everyone what to do. And I shouldn't actually say that in a public meeting. But you know what I mean. Like that group tends to get driven probably by the Department of Conservation rather than by Fish and Game and by Ngāi Tahu, unfortunately. And I think I've spoken to Rasmus about this previously, and also to some of my colleagues at Tron, is that I think moving forward, as we keep building our relationship up with Ngāi Tahu, I think that group is a really exciting opportunity, because, you know, if 2 out of 3 kind of band together, we can kind of leverage how that money gets spent a little bit differently and start thinking about some joint projects that we can do around the lake for the mutual benefit of Mana Whenua and for Fish and Game license holders. So yeah, I think it's an area of underutilization that has a reasonably steady income, although modest. So it's something we should be thinking about doing better with in years to come.
My understanding, Rasmus, you can confirm this, that a proportion of game bird licenses is actually set aside specifically, and that's the income for that fund.
That's correct, and it's all laid out in the report.
Yep.
So question on that. Is there a framework document that guides about how this money is collected and the charges against it? Because the money's building up.
Well, it's not really building. It's allowed to build up so that it can be allowed to do things, because it's not a very big sum every year. Yes, it's all laid out, and it's all part of the treaty negotiations, the settlement with Ngāi Tahu. So it's a sort of an obligation on us as a statutory management agency. But the supporting document does lay out the background to it, and the best direction I can give you, or councillors wanting to know more, or the public, is to go and look at the joint management plan, which is available online, both through Doc and Fish and Game and Ngāi Tahu as well, for Te Wahora. And that is under review, and it's going through its own separate process. It's quite a big document, but the section on Fish and Game is quite a small section and easily read.
My only comment is that we put the money aside, but we don't put any costs against it and managing that money. Like, we've got a bank audit fee, but that money is part of our audit at the end of the year, and we have to produce accounts and things like that. But we're separating that money out, and it goes into this account, which we cannot really spend other than for this initiative.
Yeah, any spending of that money needs to be agreed by all 3 parties to the agreement.
Yeah, well, it's just that we've got potentially costs that are going into this that we don't claim back from the balance.
That's right. And that's our obligation, is to sort of manage the fund on behalf of the group as the statutory management agency.
So we have to collect it and hold it on behalf of the rest of the group. But point taken. Any other questions? Okay, that's great. Thank you. We'll move on to the next section, which is the Game Bird Harvest Survey. Rasmus, once again, let's attempt to do a 30-second update and then questions.
Look, I think it's very difficult to update this year's Game Bird Harvest Survey on 30 seconds. It's a multi-species harvest survey report. It's tracking well. My one comment would be, as we're discussing black swans in the next item, and as I've been reviewing our monitoring programs, I think the Game Bird Harvest Survey needs to be a bit more fine scale for us to get the best information out of it for better decision making. At the moment, our region has 2 main management area A and Area B, one being around the coast and particularly around Te Wahora and the other one inland, we may lead to, in the future, develop a more detailed harvest survey reporting template that better aligns with how birds around Te Wahora move and how people in our region are distributed with their hunting efforts, so we can make better decisions about subpopulations.
Okay. So a couple of quick questions from me. So are there any species where the numbers are a problem or a concern?
No.
No. Okay. Any questions from the rest of council? Okay. Oh, sorry, Chris.
Yeah, I do. It's more just a comment that in agreement with what Rasmus has said, and we'll kind of touch on this shortly when we talk about Ngaitahu's work on black swans as well. But I think that we're probably gathering quite a lot of information, but I don't think that we're utilizing it as well as we could. Because what I'd really like to see with this is, so, you know, there's a table here that demonstrates that, you know, and I'm talking about ducks here and parries, you know, the harvest kind of bounces up and down. And up until kind of 2011, that seemed to be happening seasonally, and that's fine. But then after that, we've had a reasonably extreme drop, and then we've faded away, and now we're starting to recover. I just think it would be useful to kind of see some of this harvest data sitting next to our population trend count, so we understand as a percentage what we're taking out of the population. But also it would be great to have some thought given as to how we can kind of have a look at some of these harvest things. And it could well be that because X amount of birds get shot at opening weekend, if there's an opening weekend that doesn't, you know, go well for, you know, it could be a bluebird day with very little wind and nobody shoots a lot, how does that distort our harvest thing? And so should we be getting stressed out about that? And so just understanding how that number comes to be, rather than just saying there are variables that impact the count, the harvest and all of those things, so that we actually understand looking forward, well, here goes something that we've seen before, like a wet spring, and we know that a wet spring might do this, and we know that if we've got 2 dry years in a row that we might have less ducks. So it just gives us more and more tools when we come to make that decision, which we always have to make at a really inopportune time of the year, just to kind of work in around those things. So if we're using our data more considerately, I think it's just going to make us be able to manage the resource with far more kind of dexterity, but also we'll be able to defend those decisions a lot better as well, I believe.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. On that, you touched on a couple of things. Yeah, I get pretty stressed about those bluebird opening days, I can tell you. But Rasmus, what can we do about every year that kind of needing to make a decision about regulations before we can have a meeting? Is there anything we can do on timing there?
Yeah, well, we have actually changed that. So since I arrived, we have changed the timing. So we are now presenting at the August meeting the Game Bird Harvest Survey for information and discussion. At the October meeting, we will present additional staff reports with recommendations for potential regulation changes for the coming season. And they will give the councillors an opportunity to ask questions, direct further work, and a decision can be made at the December meeting, and then still have time to be delivered to New Zealand Council for January and inclusion in the regulations. So we're actually kind of, by pushing the harvest report to this meeting for information, we're setting ourselves up for success and decision making prior to Christmas.
Okay.
Rasmus, how's that going to go with the new council? Like, we'll get supplied all the information and they'll be making the decision.
Yeah, look, it's a changeover. It happens every 3 years. It's part of normal business in local government and national government to some degree. It's what we bureaucrats are here to carry you over with.
Good answer, Rasmus. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to the Black Swan report, and perhaps, Chris, I'll throw you under the bus with this one and ask for a sort of quick roundup of this.
Yeah, that's fine. It kind of follows nicely. So there's been a reasonably extensive project been going on Te Waihora for the last probably 3, 4, even 5 years around understanding black swan population dynamics. And as you guys are aware, the real driver for this is the revitalisation of egg harvest by the villages around the lake. And I guess the desire to kind of do that in a way that's as sustainable as possible. And so attached as the appendix to the wee paper I've written is a summary report on what the findings have been there, and some of the key things that have come out of there are some questions and also some recommendations. So, you know, one of the recommendations are to improve monitoring of baseline swan mortality rates and offtake by landowners and game bird license holders. So that's not that's data that really we're responsible for, but we're probably not collecting at the level that would then kind of be able to feed usefully into a project like this. Reduce the shooting of swans during the duck shooting season and prohibit shooting outside of that season until data is available to ensure that offtake permitted within those regs is sustainable. So that, you know, that kind of follows directly. You know, if you can't demonstrate that what you're doing is sustainable, then you shouldn't do it, is the recommendation there. To reinstitute customary egg harvest as a component of local species management. So that's already begun. And it's just a matter of kind of finding the right balance again. And then there's one there about restoring macrophytes food supply, which is outside of the remit of Fish and Game, but would be something that we'd be quite interested in, I would assume, if anybody knows how to work miracles, because what's good for a swan is good for a duck, and all of that stuff. You know, the lake's health and the loss of macrophytes, you know, they go hand in hand, so that makes sense. Some interesting things that jumped out to me there is that the egg harvest equivalence of shooting an adult swan is assumed to be about 6 eggs. So you can harvest 6 eggs and have the same impact on the overall population as you would by shooting a single swan. And to give further context, I know that there is a lot of concern amongst the people involved in this project about some of the permit hunts that go on around this time of the year to try and keep birds off spring grass and things like that, because, you know, if 100 birds get taken off, that can have quite a big impact therefore on overall population dynamics. So understanding that and being able to kind of work that in to the equations that these academics are making is something that'd be really important. And yeah, that's really it. So there's been lots of interesting stuff about swans come out of this project that I think are really helpful for us, but also some challenges that we're going to have to kind of have some discussions around, because it is going to kind of cause us to have to consider how we balance some of these recommendations against the needs and desires of our license holders and then landowners as well. So how we balance our responsibility to them against some of these recommendations as well.
Yeah, I think, Chris, you've summarised that really well. Yeah, we've in the past, in response to landowner complaints, really had to coerce our shooters into harvesting swans, because it's the sort of thing that's dying out. A lot of game bird hunters just don't want to shoot swans. If we can strike a good medium where we meet the needs of cultural harvest and still provide a good level of shooting. I think that's the ideal. Yeah, and I think that's achievable. Yeah, we've got a really generous black swan limit at the moment, and yeah, I don't know that that's sustainable, but there is the problem of the predation of crops and paddocks, you know, that's.
Yeah, and I mean, Trevor, my recollection, and you know, this was from a time before this council when you might remember where we actually extended the black swan season,
Yes,
because the reason for that is because we felt that the feedback we were getting from hunters was that during the game bird season, shooting black swan was actually not something people were doing, because having a bunch of swans to carry back out of the lake is actually massively inconvenient. And my assumption from that, and it's continued on, has always been that doing this, you know, targeting black swans in that way is seen by the majority as being a chore rather than I don't think people value it the same way as a goose hunt or a duck hunt or anything like that. I think it's seen as being pest control, as much as I hate to use that term about a bird that we do value. But so it strikes me that this is potentially a reasonably fortuitous opportunity, because we're talking about a bird here that we're probably not going to have to push as hard to kind of find that middle ground as we would with another species.
Yeah, it's similar to Pukeko, where, you know, the public generally have a love affair with them, and they're not really hunted widely. And, you know, I think ethically now, a lot of game bird hunters have moved away from wanting to harvest black swan, to be fair. They're a more likable bird, aren't they? So, yeah, we've got a challenge, but I'm sure we can find the right ground on that one.
Thank you, guys. Is there any other questions of Chris or Rasmus?
Yeah, so for me, the issue comes down to the farming's perspective, and it refers to in there that the farmers basically need to reduce down their nutrient loss to stop polluting the lake. But to be fair, a lot of the farms that I've had to go and shoot swans on are ones that are not really polluting. They're being mowed for silage or something like that and don't actually have any cattle on them and have issues with the swans coming on.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's the challenging thing, is how you kind of balance that against, you know, the other aspects of it.
And you're right, Chris, it's at this time of the year, right before egg, they start laying eggs. And to reduce, well, by trying to control the swans going on the farmers, you're reducing down the numbers that can lay eggs that you guys can collect. So it's kind of almost the wrong way around, but
yeah,
I'm not sure how we go forward. And I don't know, how much do we have to look after the farmers and keeping the swans off their crops?
Yeah, I vacillate, because I kind of go backwards and forwards from being like, farmers are almost quite fortunate in the fact that they can come and talk to Fish and Game. It just so happens that we're lumped with statutory responsibility for the species. If they were blackback gulls or anything like that, your farmer would be shit out of luck, you know, or he'd have to go and deal with DOC. So, and then there's other days when I'm particularly mean-spirited, and I think about the fact that, you know, if you're farming on what 50 years ago was pretty well established swan habitat, you know, it's the same as anything. If you're farming a river margin, you're going to get flooded, and if you're farming a lake margin, you're going to get swans coming and grazing. But then on the flip side of that, we do need to maintain good relationships with those people, and they do have valid points. So yeah, it's going to require a lot of discussion. It's going to require probably 2 or 3 groups of people, being ourselves and our license holders, you know, mana whenua and those land owners actually coming together and trying to have a reasonably mature conversation about it And I think the key to that conversation is going to need to be people to have a willingness to listen rather than to just kind of, you know, go in there and defend their values rather than kind of not being open to hearing those others. And I think that this report, there was something in there that did give me a little bit of hope that those landowner needs were something that did need to be considered. So yeah.
Can I just ask quickly, Rasmus, how many permits are you issuing generally? Is it a big number, or is it a small number of large and number of birds, or?
Yeah. Thank you, Alan. That's a good question. So we are not issuing any permits for black swans now in general, because a few years back, previous councils had the extended season in spring. So hunting is permitted and reasonably generous bag limits, which allows landowners to either do their own control operations or invite hunters to help them. My comment would be that both Chris and Trevor summarized this very well, and I really would like to strengthen that emphasis that this is a great opportunity for several groups to come together, farmers around the lake, hunters, and of course, iwi, to find a good model going forward. And it's a great time from a population and a harvest sort of size perspective, because we're at that lower end of a long-term time series. So if we were going to change from shooting being the main population control to egg harvest long-term being the main first step of population control, and then the hunters mop that up over the next season as we do train counts and check where the population had gotten to, now is definitely the time to do that, because we're down at lower numbers rather than being at the high end. So it's a good time, and we got it backed by this research project. So it's just a process that we will have to dedicate considerable time to, and it will tax Chris as the advisor to the council the most, I believe.
Any other questions?
It was just
sorry.
it was just one statement at the bottom of it. We recommend curbing the pollution that degrades Te Wahora, which leads to swans feeding on pasture. It's kind of putting the arse about the face. I mean, I agree that the pollution needs to stop, but it's putting all the emphasis on farmers to fix it, and yet the swans are the ones invading the pasture.
But I think you're missing the point, Phil. They're doing that because there's no macrophytes in the lake.
Yeah, correct. Which has been put down to, according to this, that the farmers have caused all that.
No comment.
No comment from me either. I prefer to focus on, there's a line in here that I thought was quite heartening. If an equitable decision was made to control swan numbers to limit grazing impacts for farmers, customary egg harvest could provide a fine-tuned dial for managing swan numbers without wasting resources. So talking about an equitable decision, I think, you know, as much as every time I hear the word equitable these days, because I hear it a lot in my day job, it makes me want to slam my head against the table. But what it's talking about there is balancing the needs of all parties. And I think that that's a good sign. And I don't necessarily think that they're talking about, you know, the immediate country around the lake either, Phil. I think that they're referring to the
total.
To the total. So, you know, from Glen Tunnel down.
No, because I mean, I agree with you guys over the hunting season. There's probably not that big an emphasis on hunting them out on the lake and anything like that. And for Ngāi Tahu to have the ability to take customary rights of eggs, I think is a brilliant thing that we should be trying to include. Just wonder how we balance I think the farmer situation and the egg harvesting will be the two biggest issues, more than the hunter.
Yeah. Okay, so just looking at this, there's one of the recommendations from the report is that North Canterbury Fish and Games cooperation and implement some of the stuff that Ngāi Tahu are keen to do. And so they would like to meet with the CE and possibly some members of council to discuss the report. Is that where you see it, Chris?
That's absolutely a must in the next wee while.
Yeah, so I assume you're all over that, Rasmus, in terms of making that happen. Is there any councillors that would wish to be part of that discussion with Ngā Tahu?
Yeah, definitely.
Yep, Trevor, anyone else?
I don't know if you want me there or not.
I 100% do, Phil.
Of course. Anyone else? Oh, good. So maybe we'll leave it with Chris, Phil, Trevor and Rasmus to sort that out, or probably Rasmus to organise a meeting and Trevor and Phil and Chris to come along. Is that okay?
Not a problem.
All good. So we'll move on to the next report, which is the salmon report. And difficult yet. Once again, Rasmus, can you give us a quick intro, and then we'll have some questions and then we'll move on.
Yeah, so this report follows previous reports formats and records where harvest and population trend counts have landed this year. This year we have returned somewhat to the traditional method of counting multiple times, but we haven't quite had the ability financially to completely do the area under the curve model as recommended by NIWA, which is 5 counts per river. And we got just over halfway there. And the population is at an all-time low, which is why we've started the season bag limit regime, which we're really looking forward to cracking on with this year ahead.
Any questions?
I was going to say it was a nicely written report and it's reduced down in size, which has made it easier to read. So I thought that was well done by the staff.
Any other questions?
Rasmus,
Add
sorry.
to Phil's comment, I agree with them insofar as it goes, but I think for governance purposes, it would be even further enhanced by having a sort of an executive summary which says this is what we found, these are the key issues, and these are the implications for the governance level of the organisation. At the moment, it's a report that's full of information, but it's not interpreted in a governance context.
That's a good comment, Graham. You've got to put this in perspective, as this report is a standard format across both regions as an annual depository for the monitoring results, sort of like the game harvest report. And I think when regulation changes come, that's when those reports that you're talking about, or proposals to amend the outcomes of the report, they're probably separate reports and may be something that we should schedule for the sort of following October, December meetings.
Yeah, I guess the model for me is what we've just been talking about, that there's a reasonably detailed, although it's only 3 or 4 pages, the Black Swan report, but Chris's 1-pager basically told me all I needed to know.
Right, yep.
That's useful. Any other questions?
Rasmus, is it fair to say that the count ship, but it's stable?
It's not stable.
It's going down?
It's quite low. It's at the very bottom end of a long-term trend.
Okay.
So we're at the very lower end of our sort of monitored cycle over a 30-year time series. It's what we'd expected, though. This is exactly what has been predicted, and this is exactly why we're having taken action. So I was encouraged by the size of the fish having returned particularly early this year, and some of the size of the bigger fish we've seen in the spawning streams when we undertook our own monitoring and the work with the Wynnum and Winter. We had fish up to just over 9 kg up there. Those are magnificent fish in the headwaters that would have been a staggering size when they entered. That is encouraging signs. There's still a lot of work to be done to stabilize and revitalize the wild population, but we've got exciting proposals ahead, both on the habitat protection front and on these new management models. So that's boding really well, and I'm so pleased after 2.5 years that we've gotten here.
Yep, so am I, Rasmus.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on. So the next item is the backcountry fishery survey. So once again, sorry, Rasmus, can you give us a quick 30-second roundup?
Sure, really exciting stuff. All of these reports, and we should celebrate them and thank the staff for having put them together. Look, backcountry fisheries, we've just started this new regime in North Canterbury. This is the second year. This year we did, together with the other regions, a sort of national satisfaction survey using online. That's the report that you have in front of you. It was a good way to do it. It allowed us to compare answers across several regions, and it was also an unusual year for our anglers because they had the backcountry to themselves. This was the year of domestic tourism, and it shined through strongly that people were very satisfied by the sort of thinking or knowledge that they had the place to themselves. It was less busy in many places, and the fishing quality appears to have been reflected in those answers in the survey. So very positive, step in the right direction for us.
Any questions?
Rasmus, I thought the spreadsheet seemed better than the graphs that were put on there and easier to understand.
Yeah, I think so too myself. But look, this is sort of a coordinated effort between staff in multiple regions, and was sent out in that format. And I think that's useful too. This will be an ongoing work, and as we work with our anglers and consult on what it is that they feel needs to be managed more when it comes to pressure sensitive fisheries, not just rivers, but also smaller high country lakes or spring fed systems that might not actually be in the high country, but might be even on the plains, but they can only sustain a limited amount of pressure. We will need to consider more fine grained tools. We may need to consider booking systems or beat systems or some other way of making sure we don't destroy the thing anglers love by overusing it. So, restricting access is always a balance point to retaining quality. It's a difficult one, but this is a good overall toolkit for us.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Right, thanks. So we'll move into the management report section 4. So the first one is the chairman's report. Are there any questions? No.
I understand you've been talking to a number of the fishing clubs, and I suspect you've probably been sharing some of your conclusions that you've listed in this document. How's the reaction been?
Really good. I have spoken at the Canterbury Fly Fishing Club, and I gave them I think in that report, I gave them the list of the things that the council have achieved in the last 3 years. And as I was writing them all down, I thought, geez, this is a pretty impressive piece of work, and we've changed the paradigm on a number of things, and we've pushed really hard for our stakeholders in this region and done an awful lot under, whilst we're having a review and a number of different other things. And when I listed them out and talked about them, everyone was pretty impressed. People kind of don't think a lot about what we do as a council and the things that we have to do. And they tend to only really see what affects them and the issues that are directly relating to them. So when we laid it all out and went through it all, I think it went down really well.
People were there, Alan?
Oh, there was no one there. It was just me, but no, there were about 40, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So they had quite a large night organised, so lots of speakers, so it was good. Yeah. On that, they were very excited about the Trout Festival coming up, Rasmus. There was a lot of talk about that. They seemed to enjoy that last year, and they were really looking forward to it this year. So, yep. Any other questions? Can I ask someone then to move a motion to accept the chairman's report? Phil, thank you. Is there a seconder?
Yeah.
Bill,
Yeah,
was it? Bill, all those in favour, raise your hand.
Oh,
I can't see you, Bill.
Can you see me now?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Against?
I'm a bit busy.
Carried. Okay, thanks. We'll move on to the finance report. So let's just start with any questions or thoughts.
So are we on the finance report?
Yeah, yep. Well, perhaps while you're thinking about that, Richard, because you're bound to have a question, Rasmus, can you just give us a quick update where the budget is at, with how that's landed?
So we have gone through a process of discussing the budget with the New Zealand Council appointed governor and accountant and our appointed governor, Richard O'Keefe, that has been agreed and peer reviewed, and everybody agrees it is sustainable for next year. And a contestable funding application for helicopter monitoring costs has been put forward. It has been peer reviewed by the managers, and a recommendation of approval has gone to New Zealand Council for decision at their next meeting at the end of August. There was lengthy discussion about the Salmon monitoring. Comments were made that it was expensive, and I was concerned to hear that our counter region, Central South Island, did not believe that it was worth $60,000 in combined monitoring costs across CSI and North Canterbury to manage salmon. I think salmon has a huge value and we need to monitor it properly. It is proper though to peer review and discuss at length how we monitor it best, because costs shouldn't be allowed to escalate beyond control. And we will seek some additional advice from NIWA, and we have agreed to collaborate with CSI to develop a proposal for the next year's budget round for how monitoring can be done effectively and sustainably within reasonable costs. So look forward to collaborating with our neighbours on that.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, when you said it's sustainable, I assume you're meaning financially sustainable and not environmentally sustainable.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah. And I just want to clarify also that with the contestable funding bid, what you're really saying is New Zealand Council will vote on approving us to spend reserves for the helicopter monitoring for salmon, searone salmon.
That's correct. They will vote on approving us spending regional reserves for the year ahead to conduct the monitoring as recommended by NIWA on the Rakaia and the Waimakariri.
Okay. Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, Rasmus, I've got a quick question. You're saying that the total budget for both regions is 60,000, so they're spending 15, was it, or 20?
15, yeah. So in round numbers, you could say that we're projected estimated costs are about 45, and their estimated costs are 15. Now they monitor one river with 3 sites, and we monitor 2 rivers with a total of 14 sites.
Okay.
And so because the Rakaia and the Waimakariri are the biggest salmon rivers with the largest numbers of anglers and the largest numbers of salmon harvest, and the biggest catchments, they have a large number of sites. And so it's not like it's a third of the costs. It's actually sort of differently. But
well within proportion what you'd expect, isn't it? So.
It is, but it's a good thing to take considerable time to develop a good program going forward, because the type of helicopter you use and how often you fly does make a big difference to the budget. So look, I think we will let this work through, and once we've developed a good proposal with guidance from NIWA, together with CSI, we will present that to both council and the national body. But I firmly believe, and I stress this both to council and to people at home, that salmon itself accounts for well over 120,000 angler days. North Canterbury accounts for between 70 to 85% of the salmon harvest each year in North Canterbury rivers across all of the East Coast. They do justify a fundamental, substantial investment. They're a real national treasure and a resource, and they should be well invested in. So I don't see a problem justifying the costs, especially not when they're simply asking to retain regional funds to manage the resource well on behalf of anglers.
So something I'll just clarify, which will be useful for you, Dave, and your New Zealand Council discussion is something like 73% of all salmon caught in the South Island are caught in North Canterbury. Am I right, Rasmus, for that? I think I remember that number.
It varies a little bit, but it's outlined in the salmon report there.
Yeah.
And so North Canterbury rivers are where the majority of the salmon angling activity occurs and where the majority of the salmon are caught. That's correct.
Yep. So that's a useful thing for you, Dave, because that's almost proportional to the helicopter costs.
Yeah, that's great. That's good information. I've just noted that down. So
yeah, and I guess I would stress that point that while it's easy to think about it as 3 rivers and they should cost a third each, that's not necessarily the case.
No, I understand that.
Some rivers have more sites because it's bigger catchments, and flying helicopters, there's a considerable safety aspect here. Flying helicopters in the upper Rakaia and the upper Waimakariri, where you're climbing up to almost 2,000 meters to go over the pass between the rivers. This is not a job for the faint-hearted. This requires skilled operators and proper machinery, and there's considerable health and safety considerations to be made when you put stuff in there. So I've been following the DOC guidelines, and I'm working with the local helicopter companies to establish our protocols as guided by council, so that we are at absolutely top notch using appropriate methods and approaches.
Okay.
Rasmus, do we have available the information of what proportion of our license holders fish for trout only, for trout and salmon, or solely for salmon?
Sort of. The last National Angling Survey in 2014-15 has breakdown tables for this for different rivers, and it's got a very, very good table on page 39 that outlines salmon angling, trout angling on the East Coast main rivers, which is quite interesting, and it's quite a high proportion for salmon. So I encourage everybody to go and have a look at that. We are entering this year a new year of National Angling Survey, and we will get updated figures. And that will be very interesting to compare those as well. So I've talked to NIWA about making sure that we can get a similar comparison and how valuable it would be to sort of add this as a trend in itself. And I do expect the numbers to bounce around a little bit. But yes, salmon angling is a massive value and a massive activity driver. If you put it in perspective, 120,000 angler days for just salmon on the East Coast rivers in CSI and North Canterbury alone, mainly in North Canterbury, is the equivalent of a whole fishing game region around most of the country. Eastern fishing game region, with all the wonderful lakes up there, only have about 150,000 angler days, just over. So that's phenomenally important number of angler days, and those angler days and that value of salmon fishery was the value that we got water conservation orders for. So let's not underinvest in this when it needs us to do the work to set good bag limits and support the fishery. Monitoring should never be a budget regulator. It does, however, need to be affordable and realistic, and there's no point in doing more than required to get the information we need. So I welcome an opportunity to develop a good proposal with CSI, but I think it's important to staunchly defend the need to spend money on salmon.
Yep, I agree. Well, that's really what I was driving at with my question. And I think we've maybe got to get a lot better at making the rest of the country understand the value of the fishery in our region.
Well, Trevor and Council, I'll just draw your attention to a couple of figures Rasmus said. Our salmon are around, and broad numbers, 150,000 angler days, and the Rotorua Lakes.
120.
Yeah, and then is it about 150 for the fishery in Eastern? And the reason the reason I raise that is because the salmon that aren't that much smaller than their whole fishery are actually not proportionally funded.
That's again what I'm getting at.
Yeah, so I just want that noted by everyone that is a fundamental problem, and they're undervalued. So moving on, we should probably actually stick to the financial bit. We've kind of got sidetracked with salmon. So any questions re the actual finances? So I know, Richard, you've had a good look through the accounts recently, and on our behalf have talked to New Zealand Council. Did you have any observations or thoughts to add? You're on mute. Richard, you're on mute.
Just looking at the July figures, the salaries and figures are negative. That should be a positive.
In the cash flow? You mean in the cash flow?
No, in the P&L.
So I'll have a quick look now online, Richard, and see which line you're meaning.
So page 76. It basically blows out. You can't really use this report for the year-to-date figures, I guess.
P&L saves. It's this
So
table,
it's
table 1 you're looking at.
The page 76. And you go down to salary and wages.
Oh, you're in the finance report, not in the P&L itself.
No, I'm in the finance report. That's what everyone's got. So.
Oh, so sorry. It's in. I'm looking at the individual PDFs. So.
Yeah. Okay. It would be, well, it's still page 76.
Staff salary 69,000. Is that what you're talking about? 58% of budget.
$67,809.
So 58% of budget year to date.
Yeah, the salary and wages should be a positive number, not a negative number.
I don't think. Yeah. So Debbie has prepared this, and she's working from home at the moment. So like all of us, but I think it's actually just a dash, not a negative. But happy to follow that up afterwards.
How do you mean? It's in brackets at the moment.
Oh, that's a negative. Rasmus, can I just ask that you get that tidied up and just email it back out to council? Sorry. Yeah, thank you. Moving on from that, is there any other issues or questions on the finances?
Can I just nitpick about expenses a little bit? What are we spending $1,000 at Pepper's Clearwater Resort for?
That is for the trout fishing event, and it is actually a miscoding there, and it's been corrected now. It's meant to be for next year's budget. The event is scheduled for 4th of September, and Debbie has mistakenly put it into this year's receivables because she received the invoice, but may have misseen the date on it.
Sorry, this is a payable.
Yeah, but it hasn't been paid and it's been adjusted.
So
So
they're invoicing us 2 months in advance.
There was an invoice put forward for budgeting purposes when we booked the event, and that's what she's uploaded into this one.
What's the event, sorry?
The Trout Fishing Festival together with the club. So this is the event that we started last year. We held it in December together with the Canterbury Fly Fishing Club. It's part of our promotion package and budget accordingly. And we pay for the facility for this event, and the club organizing it, we're supporting it and co-hosting it.
They also provide barbecue and meat and stuff,
Yeah.
don't they?
And they arrange for the speakers and all the other things. So.
Right.
Just while we're talking about that, Rasmus, I think you've had a massive reaction to an invitation.
Yeah, we had a great turnout this year. 350 people showed strong interest for this event. Now with the lockdowns, we are having a scheduled meeting tomorrow night to look at possibly postponing this or finding ways around it. You know, that's just like anything else in the country here with COVID. We will have to consider our position and adjust accordingly, so we don't create any any problems with having that many people on an indoor-outdoor event. But we want the event to be early in the season. It generates enthusiasm, engagement, and support, and probably license sales as well. And that's really what we kind of want to kickstart the season with. So we're really excited about it. We're just hoping to find a way tomorrow night on how to work around the current situation.
So to put that into context, there was about 50 people last year and now 350 this year. So that's a pretty, how many people, oh, this is probably a silly question, how many people can come to the required competition?
Most probably, we usually get between 550 and 600 adults and another about 100, I think we average about 100, between 115 and 120 juniors. So all up, that's, what's that? That's about close to 700.
Yep. So that's good. That's excellent. So the trout festivals are becoming a pretty big event. Any other questions on finances? Okay. Oh, hold on. Sorry, Yep. Sorry, Rasmus. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Well, I might just draw the council's attention to the proposed asset replacement budget for the year to come. And you can see how I've laid out a replacement of current vehicles, which are costing us a lot. And we've proposed some asset sales of, well, there were scheduled asset sales of getting rid of the old dinghy that's now been replaced with the new dinghy, and to also liquidate the old hatchery truck. And because we're selling high spec vehicles and we're mainly sticking with the Mitsubishis, we're actually able to stretch that asset replacement budget quite far, which I'm really pleased about. So have a review of that one, and if there is questions, follow up with me and we will schedule that for decision by council when appropriate.
Okay, that being said, is someone prepared to put a motion that we accept the finance report pending the amendment of the P&L to be sent to council? Or was it the P&L, I think? Page 76. Someone prepared to do that?
Yep, I'll move that way.
Okay,
Second.
so, yep, so moved by Trevor, seconded by Dave. All those in favour, raise your hand. Against? Carried, thank you. We'll move on to the Chief Executive report. Probably the easiest thing here is any questions of Rasmus, and we can move on with that.
Yeah, I've got a quick question, or more a comment than a question. I thought your priority one was probably a little bit off topic, actually. Carrying out the spawning flights doesn't really help protect the habitat, does it?
Well, it does. It helps us identify where the key habitat is. And with the runs being so low now, no more than ever is it essential that we identify the most used habitat and make sure.
I'm not arguing that we shouldn't be doing it.
No. That's the intention of the comment there, is that, you know, we really need to be very, very precise with where are salmon using the key habitats and how are they faring, what concerns do we have from them? Is it flooding? Is it land use impact? Is it dewatering? Is it something else? Is it fish screens below them? And you know, looking at that status has been a very, very big focus for us.
Yeah, I just sort of thought perhaps the priority there should be another one that says identifying habitats that need further protection. But I know I'm being a bit pedantic, I know, but that's all.
Oh, you're not Dave. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, there's no mention of where we're at recruiting staff.
No, but I'm happy to give an update now. I've had 2 interviews on the resource management, or two early discussions, and explored 2 options on the resource management position. And we haven't got the outcome from that yet. So look, we're still in recruiting phase for that position. I thought I was encouraged by the discussions, but it hasn't quite come to conclusion yet.
I
And
can
the other
say,
position, the other position,
What position?
what, the comms person or whatever?
Oh, that's been appointed since 2 months, month and a half. So
So
George,
they're working for us.
yep, yeah, George has been there and was actually scheduled to meet with the council. But I would encourage everybody to go and have a look at the Facebook account, and you can see some of the things that George has put out since the school holidays. And look, it's a really fresh approach. Some of the videos have really traveled far and wide. He's got a really great eye for both how to do the infographics, how to sort of put content in front of our license holders. And we've had really good feedback from both guides, anglers, and clubs on the sort of regularity of the content being put out via social media and the fresh approach taken by him. Some of the videos about what staff are doing to try and sort of inform the public about all the roles that Fishing Game take on, I think have been excellent. And he's got a scheduled number of these to come in the months ahead. So my only regret really, which is that George will be leaving us through the end of spring because he's got a position at Police College, which is great for him, is that, you know, we'll find it hard to replace him when the time comes with somebody similar. But I'm really pleased how the position is developing.
any other questions? Can someone put forward a motion that we accept the report?
I'll move.
Okay, Dave and Phil seconds it. All those in favour, raise your hand. Against? Carried. Thank you. Move to the health and safety report quickly, Rasmus.
If you want me to comment, I think the real emphasis here is the fact that having gone through and done risk analysis on our vehicles and discovered, or on the equipment, the trailers, discovered that there was considerable urgent maintenance needs that need to be done on several of them. It just reinforces the importance of proper protocols and good service schedules, but most importantly, proper storage for these. They've been standing outside for years. Lots of this damage could have been avoided had they been properly housed, and that is scheduled to be rectified with a carport. I'm pleased that we got on top of this, and that, you know, it really was a good testament to being in advance, proactively looking to make sure problems don't happen.
Thank you. Any questions?
Sorry, I heard the word carport.
Yeah.
We're building one?
We've proposed the carport in the asset replacement to be erected on the back of the current shed so that these can be housed under cover.
Okay, so someone prepared to put forward a motion to accept that report, health and safety report? Everyone's
I'll do
looking
that.
tired. Bill, thank you. And a seconder,
Yeah, well,
Ken, thank you. All those in favour, raise your hand. Against? Carried. Thank you. Gentlemen, everyone's looking tired. We're not far away. New Zealand Council report, Dave.
Yeah, just nothing really to report. There's been no meeting since our last meeting. Next meeting is scheduled for the 27th, 28th of August, which is the end of next week, next Friday, Saturday. So yeah, booked to fly up there, but sort of expecting that could well be a Zoom meeting. I guess everyone is aware that a new acting CEO has been appointed, Di Taylor. I've only met her on a Zoom meeting once, a brief one we had a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, she seemed very capable, really highly thought of.
Is she just an acting CEO, did you say?
Yeah. They didn't want to apply for advertise for the full position with the review situation the way it is at the moment, and also that they had originally done that, but then offered the job to someone who turned it down, accepted it, and then a few days later turned it down by accepting a better deal with the current employer. Yeah, so that was a bit unfortunate. And they thought there would be it wouldn't be a very good look to advertise and replace, advertise again straight away.
Right.
So they've just gone and appointed this. I think it's a secondment from PwC, I think.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yep. All right. Any questions? Thank you.
I haven't seen the agenda for next week's meeting. So yeah, if anything comes out of that, I'll share it with the council. But
Dave,
yeah.
what happened on the turnaround for the pheasant preserves? Because it was a bit of a right-hand turn again.
Oh, yeah. A very complex situation. There's just no one seems to know how to deal with that. Whichever way you go, there's opposition both ways. And there was a lot of kickback from the original decision that was made by the Game Council. Was it the Game Animal Council or whatever they call themselves? And they went back to DOC, and DOC relitigated the whole thing. And the end result was, now that we've gone back to the status quo, it's basically going to be that they'll be allowed to continue.
Okay.
Amazing.
I couldn't remember what our our call was on that, when in the initial consultation round.
I think we didn't support them.
We didn't support it.
Yeah. Yep. So that's just kind of a bit. We're all sitting here just watching the screen, all shaking our heads, thinking, what the heck?
Yeah, it's probably not that big a call for us down here, though, is it? I think it's more a North Island thing. Or have I got that wrong?
Oh, there's one in Timaru, but I was at that meeting, and the previous one, they kind of bungled it to do with some of the rules of the, schedule, the difference between Schedule 1 and Schedule 3.
Yeah.
It just got really messy when it came to receiving funds for basically selling birds for people to hunt.
Yeah, I think you're quite right, Dave. It's not the same issue in this region. I would be concerned if they look to try and widen the species that were contained within these preserves. That would be a different story. I think there's probably 40% birds escape from those preserves into the wild. So yeah, it's possibly not the issue here, but
that was the big thing. I'm just looking through my notes I made at that meeting, and that was the big argument for it, for them to continue, is that the leakage of spilling of birds out of the reserves into the wild. That's
I think
it makes it available for everyone. Yeah.
The issue we had was around setting a precedent.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, if I can comment, I went online. I can't recall the name of the preserve, But they were offering that if you went to shoot the pheasants, you could also shoot the mallards and fish in their pond for trout.
Yeah, that's been the real issue in the North Island with limited access and access for paying customers. It's a whole different ball game, isn't it?
Yeah, that's going in a bad direction.
And I think a certain New Zealand councillor was purchasing mallards to release, or was looking at purchasing mallards to release.
Yeah, it's a far different story when you're selling the right to hunt ducks and someone's feeding ducks within a preserve and drags all the ducks in the surrounding district to that area to shoot. They're totally different to hand-reared pheasants.
Okay, so any other questions of Dave? If not, can someone put forward a motion that we accept the report?
Sorry, it's very brief and verbal. Yeah.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Phil, and a seconder.
Yep.
Who was that? Oh, Trevor, thank you. All those in favour, raise your hand. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Dave. Chief Executive Officer Employment Committee, Graham.
The committee hasn't met again since the last meeting, which was reported at our 16 June meeting.
Yeah, unfortunately, COVID is, mucked up today. So,
however, there's been minutes prepared that should be distributed to this council.
Yeah, they're not finalised yet, Richard. They were approved in draft by those members of the committee who were present, but Rasmus has subsequently raised some suggestions for further changes. So I'm waiting on those.
So the process.
Well, then I'm going to raise something in the public excluded meeting.
Yep.
People need to be aware of.
Yep. Okay. So nothing else, Graham?
No.
No other questions? Okay, can someone put forward a motion to accept that? Rex. Hold on, sorry, Rex, and seconded by Dave. All those in favour, raise your hand. And against? Carried, thank you. Public session is going to be very short as there are no public on the video, unfortunately. And we didn't have any general business. And the rest is for our information. There's a letter from the City Council.
Could I just raise something on that?
Yeah, sure.
In that letter, I noticed it says that that statement at the start of it, your property is inside an air noise boundary around Christchurch International Airport, blah, blah, blah. Proposed changes will limit the ability to subdivide within the air noise boundary where currently a landowner can apply for resource consent to subdivide, but not to build a house. So I wondered, why did we not just apply for a resource consent to subdivide? Because we didn't need to build a house. The house is already there.
Yeah, no, they still would.
Yeah.
They would have just simply not supported the application, or in fact, they would have been against it.
Yeah, we consulted on
The
this.
airport company.
I still think we should have, on the basis of that, I think we should have applied.
No,
run its
that's incorrect, Dave. So we consulted on this, and what the key thing here is that they are absolutely dead against residential development or
The
residential
airport
housing.
authority. The airport
Residential
authority is.
housing within the noise zone,
Yeah.
and because
well,
we have an
someone
office.
someone can
Hang
be
on.
against an application, but it doesn't mean to say they're going to get their way.
Oh, so just to be clear,
Well,
because
we
it's
did
inside
consult with legal advice.
because it's inside the 65 dB noise contour of the airport, they actually have a power veto, and that's just that.
Okay.
Have we got advice?
Yes.
Yeah,
By
I
a
remember
planner.
we did get a legal
We
advice.
got a
yeah.
planner, the planner that actually did the site for us originally. Kim, can't remember his second name. Yep. And that's the problem, because it's in that noise contour. They actually do have a power of veto effectively.
Effectively, or yeah, see, there's words like that that make me wonder whether we've been bulldozed into, just backing off.
Well, I've
The
worked
one way
with
to
them.
really test this out would be to put in an application and let it run. It'd probably cost us a fair bit. Might cost more than the bloody thing's worth,
Yeah.
but
No, it's a dead duck. I've worked with them for a long time.
Cost a lot of money.
The only way that we would have got that through is if they supported the application, and then it would have gone through.
they're not making the decision. They don't.
Well,
Anyway,
unfortunately,
okay, right,
in the noise boundary, they pretty much do. Unfortunately. Any other issues, questions? So we got the letter from the council. We've got a submission on the Natural and Built Environment Act. Some details there. The Winneman Wintu report. Is there any questions on any of those items? Okay, if there's no questions on those, I will declare the meeting closed at 8:21. Thanks. Rasmus, if you can stop the recording, please.